You know when you're reading an ancient text and you hit a long list of names and your eyes just kind of glaze over? Well, today we're tackling one of the most famous lists in history, Genesis chapter 10, also known as the Table of Nations. But trust me, this isn't just some boring list. It's actually an ancient map, a foundational story of how the entire world was repopulated from just a single family. So let's trace its lines and see where they take us.
I mean, just imagine the scene for a second. The entire world has been wiped clean by a massive, catastrophic flood. Only one family makes it through, Noah and his 3 sons. So the big question is, where did everybody else come from? How did we get from one family on an ark to the sprawling, diverse nations we see all over the world?
Well, this right here is basically the answer key. This ancient document lays out what you could call a blueprint, an origin story for every tribe and nation its authors knew about. You can think of it as this massive, elaborate family tree that tries to explain the entire ancient world. It kicks off by saying, these are the generations of the sons of Noah, framing itself not as a myth, but as a historical record.
So our story really begins with a world being reborn. The text makes a really simple but totally profound claim that every single person, every nation, every kingdom, they can all trace their lineage back to just 3 guys and their families, the sons of Noah.
And these are the big 3, the primary branches of this new human family, Japheth, Ham, and Shem. The whole rest of the chapter is going to follow these 3 lines to show us how the world got filled. So we're going to trace each one, kind of using this family tree as our guide to this ancient map.
So first up is the branch of Japheth. Now, according to this map, his descendants are the ones who spread out and populated the coastlands and the islands. You can think of them as the maritime peoples, the ones living in the regions to the north and west of the ancient Near East.
Okay, so the text gives us 7 sons of Japheth, and from them the family tree just branches out even more. From Gomer, you get 3 distinct lines, and from Javan you get 4 more. The structure is really methodical, carefully laying out these clans that would, down the line, become peoples we can identify. Each name on this table, like Ashkenaz or Tarshish, isn't just a person. It's the start of a whole people group that would spread across the land. And this is where it all comes together. After listing all those names, the text gives us the payoff. It says, these are the families who settled the Isles of the Gentiles, or, the coastlands of the nations. Each one was divided into its own land, with its own language, its own family, its own nation. See? It's directly connecting the family tree to an actual map of the world. All right, let's move on to the second branch, Ham's descendants. And this is where the details really start to build. This section is way more detailed, which probably means these peoples were more prominent or just better known to the authors. It describes these powerful kingdoms to the south, and it introduces us to the world's very first empire builder.
So, Ham has 4 sons, Cush, Mizraim, which is actually the Hebrew name for Egypt, Phut, and Canaan. Now, the text is going to spend a lot of time on 2 of these lines in particular, the line of Cush, because of one very famous individual, and the line of Canaan, because of the lands they ended up living in.
And then, all of a sudden, the genealogical list just pauses. The text zooms in on one man, Nimrod, a descendant of Cush, and instead of just getting another name, we get a description. The author tells us this guy was a mighty one, a mighty hunter. This little narrative break is a huge signal that this guy, Nimrod, is incredibly important.
And here's why. Nimrod isn't just some hunter. He's a king and a city builder. The beginning of his kingdom was Babel, in the land of Shinar. We're talking ancient Mesopotamia here. From there, he expands north into Ashur, or Assyria, and builds the great cities of Nineveh and Calah. This isn't just a family tree anymore, right? This is straight-up political history, explaining the origins of the world's first empires.
The text does something similar for the descendants of Canaan, but here it's all about territory. It's like drawing a map with words. It explicitly lays out the borders of the Canaanites, from Sidon up in the north, down the coast to Gaza, and then heading east towards cities of the plain like Sodom and Gomorrah. This is literally cartography through text, defining a very specific piece of real estate.
And that brings us to our final branch, the descendants of Shem. Now, this line is absolutely crucial for the rest of the biblical story, and it contains what is maybe the most mysterious and fascinating little detail in the entire chapter.
Okay, so Shem has 5 sons, including Ashur, who gave his name to Assyria, and Arphaxad. The text wants us to follow Arphaxad's line down 2 generations to a guy named Eber, and that name, Eber, is the very root of the word Hebrew.
The focus here is totally intentional, setting the stage for what comes later. Now, Eber had 2 sons, and the name of one of them marks a world-changing event.
His son was named Peleg, which literally means division. And you have to ask, why? Well, the text tells us, clear as day, for in his days the earth was divided. This one cryptic line has fascinated people for centuries. What does that even mean? Was it a physical division of the continents? A linguistic one, like at the Tower of Babel? A political division of peoples? The text just drops this huge bombshell and moves on.
So, after charting these 3 family lines all across the globe, let's just zoom out for a second. What have we actually been looking at here? What's the real purpose of this incredibly detailed document that's part family tree, part world map?
You see, this was way more than just a list of names. It was an ancient form of, you could say, ethnography and political geography. It was trying to explain the diversity of people and languages, to define nations by their territory and their family lines, and even to ground political claims in ancestral history. But maybe the biggest statement of all, that despite all our differences, at the end of the day, everyone comes from the same family.
The text's own final sentence really sums it all up perfectly. It starts with families, and it ends with nations. It's a story of unity branching out into diversity, of one single trunk sprouting into this whole forest of nations that filled the earth after the flood.
And that really leaves us with something to think about. This was one of the very first attempts in history to systematically make sense of the entire human family. Its ideas about lineage, territory, and having a shared origin are thousands of years old, but don't they still echo in how we think about our own identities, our nations, and our connection to each other today?